Hey there, welcome to my studio here in New York City. I'm Daniel Norton, photographer, and today we're going to make some photos of a product. You know, as glamorous as shooting models or portraits is, shooting product is a pretty steady business, and a lot of people are interested in how to do it. It doesn't have to be that complicated, so I'm gonna make a few videos here just kind of showing you some basic stuff. I've got what is potentially a hard thing to photograph, something that is black, and I want to shoot it on a dark background. And I'm going to show you how we'll make that work using various tools here. So I've got my laptop here. I'm going to tether into Capture One as always. You want to be tethered with product photography if you can. Super important. We want to be able to see what we're getting. I've got my camera here. That's a Z6 II up on a tripod. I'll put links in the description to what all this stuff is, but basically I've got my 24 to 120 lens on there. You could use all kinds of different lenses for this, but this gives me a good range. I'm using Profoto lights. I've got my remote here, and I have two lights. These are both Profoto B10s. This one is fitted in a Chimera extra small softbox, and this one here has a grid on it. And we'll talk about how we're going to use each one as we get into it. So first of all, you can see the studio is lit up, obviously, so I can make a video. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that none of the light in the studio is affecting our shot. So we do this a lot in the live streams. You may have seen it before. I'm going to set my ISO at the lowest within the normal range, my shutter speed at the highest within the normal range. So in this case, 100 and 200. And then I'm going to set my f-stop at the right space to get rid of all the light in the space and give me the depth of field I want. Here I'm going to choose f8. I know that's enough because I shoot in here all the time, but also I know f8 will give me the depth of field I want. So first of all, I'm just going to take a frame. Again, we call this usually the block frame, as it would be. And I'm going to take a shot and we're going to take a look. What we can see here in Capture One is it's basically dark. I actually can see a little bit popping up. So f8 might not be enough for me here, being that it's so bright outside. So I'm going to go to f9. That's where we want to be. So now that we got that out of the way, let's light this thing. So let's start with what is effectively going to give the shape to our product. Now, I mentioned we're using a dark background, right? Well, you may not have noticed this, but the wall over here is white. What we're going to use is effectively the direction of our lights and the inverse square law, right? To make the background darker. The further the light is from the background, the darker it'll be. So I'm going to take my light here on a C-stand. Again, I'm using C-stands for a reason. It's because I want to boom my light forward so it's not in the shot. I'm going to take my light. I'm going to boom it out. You're going to want to put a sandbag on this, of course, if there are people around, you know, for safety and all that. We're going to tilt it down a bit. Okay, so what we're going to do here, partially for you to be able to see and partially for me to be able to see, is I'm going to turn on the modeling light. I want the light to hit the back of my figure, kind of cut the edge here, and I want to cut it out a bit. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to look it through the camera. Now, if you're by yourself like I am, and you want to make this a little bit easier, you can go over to Capture One, turn on the live view, and you can probably see, I can see that. You're not going to see it in a second because I'm going to spin it over here towards myself. Now I can see what I'm getting. Obviously, I'm not seeing the correct exposure, but I'm seeing the position of the light. Takes a little while to get your eyes used to it as far as things are falling, but what I want to make sure is that the flash itself is not in my shot and that I'm getting, you know, more or less even coverage. The light spreads out obviously as it goes. The further back I put it, the more even it'll be, but also the more light we're probably going to get on the background because, you know, it's going to bounce. But let's start there. Okay, I'm just going to put it in TTL. This is my A light. I'm going to turn off the light with the grid, which is that one. And we're just going to do a quick, I just tested it. We'll do a quick test shot and see what we get. Okay, cool. This is mostly for light positioning. It looks like to me that I don't have enough light on one side of the statue. I also have a little bit too much on the head. So I'm just going to kind of come over and recenter the light. A lot of this comes down to personal preference. I'm going to make it fairly even. We'll take another shot. Cool, that's pretty good. I think I might raise it a tiny bit too so I can get a little bit more of the light to come into the front on the legs as it would be. And all we're doing here is tweaking this out a little bit at a time to get it the way we want it. If you have a client, obviously they'll have an idea of what they want to see. If not, this comes down to whatever you like. What's your personal preference, how you want it to look. And how I want it to look, I think, is a little bit like brighter around the arms. And the way I'm going to do that, now that I'm looking at it, is I'm actually going to bring the light in closer. Just not getting the exact feel I want. The beauty of using TTL for this kind of stuff, by the way, is that you notice I'm not having to meter over and over again. The camera is automatically remetering as I move the light. I'm going to want to tweak it. You don't want to just trust the camera, but it'll at least give you a good ballpark. There we go. That's closer to what I want. I'm going to move it slightly this way. Do one more shot. There we go. All right. That's getting to where I want it to be. Now, obviously, the front of the statue is not lit at all, and that's where our grid's going to come in. I've got the grid here on my B10. This is in my B group. I'm going to bring the light in. And this is one of the great advantages of C-stands, obviously, is the ability to kind of get them exactly where you need them. I'm going to move this in. Tip this up. And down, as it would be. To save battery, I'm going to turn off this modeling light and this light altogether, to be honest with you. We turn this one on and turn on this one's modeling light. So from here, we're going to make a little circle of light around this guy. I am on Duvetine, so it's going to absorb up most of the light that's hitting the ground, so it's not going to be this bright spot, which is perfect. Again, I'm mostly centered. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That's a good place to start. Might be a little too bright on the head. So I'm going to move it back a little bit, because remember, both lights are hitting the head. Cool. All right, so this is, again, just the one light in TTL. Nice. There he is. And again, the background's basically black. The statue is lit up. It's a little flat, but we see, flat as far as like not sticking out of the background. And the exposure looks fine though. So let's come in and let's turn on the A light. Now I'm going to switch to manual so my exposure doesn't change, and I'll tweak it manually from here. Cool. That looks good. You can see that light coming in from the back. Let's take a quick look at it and see what we want to do exposure-wise. I think I'm going to bring the backlight up. This is without the backlight. I'm going to bring the backlight up a 10. That's the A group. I'm going to bring it up, have a stop. But again, this is just my personal preference. There we go. Perfect. Now we're getting basically different levels of gray and black. We basically have several levels of black here. We've got the background here, which is like almost black. We've got this kind of lighter gray color in the foreground, which kind of mimics the statue itself, and parts of the statue are a little bit brighter. And then we have the deep recessed shadows of the statue, which are absolute black. And that gives us a nice three-dimensional feel to this. You could use multiple props to make this different if you like, but this is nice and simple. You'll also see that there's a little bit of chipping and stuff on this, which maybe we'll retouch that out a little bit in another video. All right, I hope that was helpful. Let me know your tips for shooting product photography down in the comments below, or your questions, and I can answer them. If you haven't already, check the description. You'll find a link to all the stuff I used in this video. You'll find a link to my Discord server. You can join up over there and be part of the conversation, and also a link to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. I'll talk to you soon.